This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning and welcome to another African bush extravaganza, starting off with the world's largest land mammal and the plethora of wildlife that awaits us finding and looking at them. My name is Jamie, the man behind the camera is Brian, and this is Safari Live.
Ready. Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live. On a very special live safari experience here on our Sunrise Safari, we are coming to you from a world-famous wildlife area from Djuma, Arathusa and Cheetah Plains Game Reserves in the Sabi Sand in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. An enormous, almost untapped wilderness area where elephants just like these are able to roam over a distance of 4 million hectares. Not only are we live, but we are also interactive, which means that if you have questions about these amazing creatures, like this little elephant in front of you, you can send that through on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through to questions@wildearth.tv. And here we sit on a beautiful spring morning as the temperatures are already starting to heat up, right up in the top northeastern corner of South Africa. And at the moment our beautiful animals are really seriously struggling to try and find themselves some food. And this particular female is determinedly digging. You can see the dust flying around, trying to get to the root system of this particular tree that she's managed to push over. Look at her go. There's dust absolutely flying around, covering the poor little one. She is determined to get to whatever is underneath that particular tree. And at the moment, the trees are taking a serious hammering from the African elephants as they search for one of the few remaining parts of the plant that actually still have water and nutrients in them, which is, of course, the roots. And what that means is that normally, when an elephant feeds off a tree, or often when an elephant feeds off a tree, it munches away on the leaves and then leaves the tree to carry on growing. But now, they're pushing them right over and getting down to the root system and killing the tree in the process, which is not necessarily a bad thing, particularly in dense areas like this one. That's why they are so important, such an integral part of this ecosystem, making sure that the tree layer doesn't overcompete or ruin the grass layer that grows beneath it. What an awesomely peaceful way to start off your morning. Or our morning, at least. Not all of you are watching in the morning. I know some of you are very, very late at night. Little one, just sort of around 3 years old, tusks just peeking through, and probably has only recently been totally weaned from mum. Pushing against mum to try and get to whatever root scraps she happens to have dropped. We'll stick with these elephants for a little bit longer, but for now I know that Mr. Henry is absolutely dying to say good morning to you, so without any further ado, let's head across to him.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this end of the Sunrise Safari, where, ironically, the sun is just about to rise. My name is James Henry. On camera today is David. Hello, David.
Hi, James.
How are you feeling today, David?
I'm all right, thank you, James.
David had a little trouble getting out of bed today, but he's with us now, relatively awake. Hopefully, I am in focus. Now, we're going to go and see if we can't follow up on some leopards today. I like to say some leopards on the off chance that we may see, well, more than one. Nchila, perhaps. She was seen yesterday at 8 o'clock at the Dam Cam. There was a leopard sawing at 4:02, and in between that, how's this for a list? A duiker, a zebra, a hippopotamus, 2 hyenas, and 5 Nkuhuma lionesses during the course of the evening. Thank you, Lucy and South Bend, Indiana, and of course to Chris Rogue for identifying the leopard. And a civet. I forgot about the civet. Can you believe it? Please talk to us during the course of the morning. #Safari Live or questions at wildearth.tv. You can ask us any questions. We can talk about anything you'd like, really. Well, as long as it's vaguely related to the wilderness, and that would be good. So we've got 3 hours to try and find some leopards. Jamie, I hope, will find the Nkuhuma Pride that came, I suspect, in quite similar position to where they were yesterday. We're kind of in the middle of the reserve, and the sun is about to peep up, David. There it comes. I think, well, maybe not just yet. And we're going to head south from here towards the southern boundary where Rexon is having a look to see if he can't find the tracks of maybe Karula, maybe Tingana, maybe the little babies, and maybe the elusive Nchila. Be good to see her again, spend a bit of time with her, and perhaps, sorry everybody, I seem to be unable to swallow these days. This is ridiculous. Sorry, David. I do apologise completely. I might have to rinse my mouth out. All right, there we are. Thankfully, we have the sunrise coming up, and you don't have to watch me coughing and spluttering in a consumptive fashion. Slight breeze, and it really is an oddly warm time today. It's about 17 degrees Celsius, 63 degrees Fahrenheit, which is quite something for this time of the year, and we're rather nervous that it's going to be very hot today. Come on, sun, we just need to see your first little dribble of molten lava coming up over the top. David, do you think it's on strike today? No, there it is. I see it. I see it. There she blows. There's the sun, everybody. And just watch when Dave zooms all the way in. Look how fast it comes up. And it's especially, you can see it very nicely in amongst those twigs. You see how quickly the space is filled by the giant burning, exploding, gaseous ball that is the sun. Billions and upon billions of hydrogen atoms smashing into each other, exploding, releasing the energy of Einstein's immortal equation, E=mc², forming helium, which in turn smashes together to make even heavier elements in a sun that size. A seemingly inexhaustible source of fuel. Hydrogen is the main one. And one day that will run out, believe it or not. Not in my lifetime, not even in your lifetime, David, even though you are younger than me. You will not be around to see the end of the sun, we don't think. Should be about 1 billion years or so, I believe. Right, I always say 2/3 of the sun up is probably sufficient. Let us continue on our search for the leopards. Are you ready, David? Here we go. Hello, Miss Lynn in North Carolina. You want to know if David stayed up too late watching movies? No, I don't think he did, you know. It's funny, we all didn't sleep very well last night. I think it was hot. There were many mosquitoes and many flies, indeed. And I think they all disturbed us a little bit. Anyway, as we search for the leopards, let's go back to the elephants and find out what they have to say about their sleep.
I think that they probably slept better than we did last night, although an elephant, of course, doesn't need to sleep quite for the same amount that we do. I know that I slept terribly. I've got that sort of groggy, strange feeling that one has after an unsettled night. I think Brian feels much the same. A slightly disconnected feeling. But what a perfect way to wake up than just sitting with elephants and easing into the morning, slightly, in a slightly gentle manner. It's sort of the opposite of a wild dog sighting. Wild dogs racing around, constant excitement, high levels of adrenaline. The elephants, that's not to underestimate them. You always have the potential of a high adrenaline moment with elephants if they happen to be upset with you. But in this case, the elephants could not be less bothered by our presence. This young male with his one tusk, got a broken off left one. He's got a lovely big thick right tusk, and as I said, no left tusk. But morally, no, you can't necessarily judge the condition of an elephant from the colour of their tusks, and that's because they're constantly covered in mud and sort of plant debris. That's what's all over this particular male's tusk there, towards the base where it meets his trunk. So it's difficult to gauge exactly what colour the tusks truly are because they are utilised. They are tools for the elephants, unlike an awful section of the human population that utilise them as decor. For the elephant, they are a necessary tool, and they are used almost constantly to rip away branches and to dig. So you can't gauge anything from the colour. You might be able, if the tusk is cracked in some way, to imagine that perhaps the elephant has an uncomfortable, hello boy, you're going to come and be full of nonsense. I'm thinking about it. Hello, little boy. Just want to come and eat here. Yes. Questionable. So yes, elephants do get abscesses. The tusk is, of course, a modified tooth. And that actually can result in one very grumpy elephant. Those of you who've experienced toothache, you can just imagine what it must be like. Please don't push that onto us. I think we're just out of reach, but only just. He's decided to come and start digging right there. Brian, I think it'll miss you. Or hopefully. We feel comforted by that particular observation. Yes, but those of you with toothache, you can just imagine having a heavy tusk dangling off the front of your face that is aching or infected. And you can imagine why elephants do get into such a bad mood when they have a cracked and painful tusk. Little boy. I don't think there's much there anyway for you to eat. No, time to move on. All right, mister. Look at his beautiful brown eye. A teenage elephant. They can sometimes be full of nonsense, but look at those beautiful big eyelashes, protecting that very, very sensitive eyeball. How's that for a view? When last did you get to look right into an elephant's eye? You sleepy, boy? Did you not sleep well either? He's gone very still. I think he's just resting. Yes, yes. You gorgeous. You see the waxy deposit around the corner of his eye? It's just a coating that helps protect against the dust and the plant material that's flying around at the moment. You'll notice it more in the dry season than we do in the wet season. Hey boy, what's up? He is absolutely gorgeous. Right up next to the vehicle, giving us a perfect opportunity to examine him. I still think, you see that twist in his trunk, I still think that he's contemplating whether or not he can be bothered to come and try and give us a bit of a scare. He's moving his trunk in a sort of a indecisive way. Look at the ears. That sickle bush isn't going to be very nice. Hey, big boy. Aren't you lovely? It's okay, you can come through. You're not going to misbehave, I promise. And as our lovely Ellie ball slowly wanders off and moves to where the female was feeding earlier, Richard in New York, lovely to have you on our sunrise safari. The broken tusk won't hamper him too much in terms of his attractiveness to females. So Richard was wondering, would it perhaps impact whether or not a female would find him attractive? Not necessarily. It might have a slight impact on his ability to compete for a female, just in terms of fighting off other large males, but he's got a long way to go before he's at that particular point in his life where he's big enough and strong enough to compete. Females don't necessarily show a preference for physical appearance, as far as we know, with elephants, but they're not like humans in that respect at all. But they do show a preference for bulls in must when they choose a potential mating partner. Oh, she's covering us in dust. There's clouds of it that she's kicking up. The elephant cows do show a preference for bulls in must, although that might also be skewed by the fact that bulls in must are a bit more aggressive in terms of their competitiveness for access to females, and therefore might just have more of a chance to mate with them anyway. Most of the time it is the biggest bull in the group that gets a chance to mate with a female. Oh! Some amazing vocalizations filling the air. One angry elephant, a little bit further north of us. There's a very good chance that that particular sound was made by a young elephant, not terribly impressed with life, probably being disciplined. Perhaps it got in the way of a female. It often seems to be the young males that end up making that sound because they're much less tolerated than the younger females of the herd, and they often get in the way where they shouldn't be, and as a result they get pushed about by the adults in the herd. Of course, elephants have some of the most sort of complex social structures of any of the animals out here. They are vastly intelligent creatures. And James Richards' question is a very good one, which is, when elephants' herds meet up, will the matriarchs have some kind of special communication, and whether or not we've ever witnessed that. And whilst it's not necessarily just the matriarchs, yes, absolutely they do. And I have witnessed it on multiple occasions where two elephant herds have come together. And I have to tell you, without anthropomorphizing too much, because that's always a dangerous thing, supposedly, but I have seen them race, two elephant herds race together, and it's clearly a happy reunion. They all rush up to each other and start to greet, and then they do that special greeting ceremony that elephants perform, which is basically where they walk right up to the other elephant. They wrap the trunk across the top of the forehead and touch the tip of it to the temporal gland that lies between the ear and the eye, and that basically is one of the elephant's main sources of olfactory communication. So where they exude hormones and pheromones and basically tell the elephants how they are feeling. And it's beautiful to witness. I've seen little elephants go racing off to see another young elephant from a different herd that is clearly a friend. They clearly recognize each other, and I'm quite adamant on that subject. And quite often what you'll find is that elephant herds, I mean, they're not territorial. They move about an area, they all know each other. In some cases they might even be related, or it might be a split when a herd got a little bit too large. And I'm sure that the matriarchs play a huge role in that. The older maybe not just the matriarch, all of the older females will play a role. And then the young males come along behind, and there's an exciting companionship and playing around. I've just heard a report that the lions that we were meant to be tracking this morning, before I got distracted by the elephants, are on their way in this direction, so I'm going to try and figure out exactly where we go from here. In the meantime, let's jump across to James and find out where he is.
I'm in the river, everybody, and a little while back I heard the call of this bird, a very special little bird called the yellow-throated apellis, and I said to you, I don't know if we've seen them live, and somebody said they had. Well, for those of you who haven't, there they are. Two having a lover's spat. They're up top there, David, in the tambota tree. There we are. And now they're back where they were. Now they're back again. But there they are, everybody. The yellow-throated apellis having a lover's tiff, I think. I think he obviously came home late last night. She is very upset with him, and she's now chasing him around the house. But just consider for 1 second, would you, the speed with which those birds are moving through sticks and leaves and things that could knock them out of the sky in seconds. They follow each other almost exactly. How they're able to do that is, I think, absolutely stunning. They're right on the top here. Oh, you silly birds. We'll give this a little bit longer before we move on, just in case they decide to sit for you nicely. They are sitting nicely now, just not within view. David, I'm going to sneak backwards a little bit. See if we can't get a slightly better view of the yellow-throated apellis. No. Nothing there. Alright, there's a bit of a bird party going on here. We're at the southern reaches of the Great Mlwamati. I suppose it's getting a bit old now that I say it is a raging torrent, and clearly it isn't. Look at the colours in this jackalberry tree as we go underneath it, everyone. It's being caught by the new light of the day. But the new light of the day, I believe, is going to remain golden like it is now for a very short period before it goes burnished white. It's going to be a very hot day indeed. I was hoping to find Karula just around the corner here, lying in the sand with her babies. She isn't here. Nor isn't Sheila, and nor have I seen any tracks. So maybe Lucy or Chris, I think James Richard, you also saw her. Anybody who saw Sheila, do you know which way she went? That is very important, of course. I haven't seen any tracks. I suspect she probably went north into the block north of Gallagher Pan, and that area, well, it's just not get intoable without breaking something on the car. Aubrey is hailing me on the radio. Go ahead. Male leopard tracks going east.
So I'm going to quick check where the have crossed towards the Vietnam exit.
Lions? All just tracks? Okay, copy, thanks. Just try and get hold of Rexon. I'll come up there as well. So there's some leopard tracks going east from the northern boundary. Looks like a big male. Rexon is out, so maybe he'll pop up there and have a look. Also some male lion tracks round about where Jamie is, so that's very good. Some decent prospects. There is a large animal. David, did you see it? You don't. You don't see it. Look carefully, David. It's very big. About 1.4 tons worth of giraffe. I was going to be so very worried about David's eyes if he hadn't seen the 1400 kilograms of giraffe standing there feeding with his blue tongue. Now, we had some wonderful information from a viewer the other day about the blue tongue on the giraffe. If you if you pull the tongue all the way out, so were you perhaps to be sitting in that tree and as he stuck it out, you grabbed it and pulled it, what you would find that towards its bottom end it's pink. It's not only, it's blue like that, apparently to protect it from the sun. It's got a whole lot of melanin in the tongue, well, the bits of the tongue that get stuck out, which I think is quite amazing. You hear that, David? There's an aeroplane coming overhead, everybody. Take cover. Goodness, that's very loud and low. I think it must be one of the landowners with his private plane. It's quite nice, don't you think, David? How did you get here? Well, I came in the plane. Maybe he's going shopping in Nelspruit. And there you can see the light catching our giraffe. I must just excuse whatever it is that is getting stuck on my epiglottis at this stage, causing me to cough irritatingly into the microphone. And just let's listen to some of the birds. Hoopoes mainly. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. So Lucy and Chris, you say that Nchila went behind the Djuma Dam and you didn't see where she went from there. Well, I wonder. Remember, we saw her coming to have a drink there the other day. Then she turned around and went back towards the dam wall and over the top and came out eventually, and we sat and watched her. I wonder if she doesn't have a kill in the dam, in the drainage line there. Let's listen to the birds. Just the hoopoes calling to each other. Whoop, 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 whoop. Whoop, whoop. It's very nice. Hello, Sandy. You say is skin peeling on the giraffe? No, it isn't. Sandy, what it is it's a parasite of sorts, an ectoparasite that is on all giraffe. They all get it, and it's quite a good way of aging them or figuring out their ages. Let's see how extensive that parasite is. And it doesn't seem to do much damage to them at all. It just kind of makes those fairly, well, should we say, unattractive patches on the neck, but it doesn't actually do them any harm whatsoever. But it's totally normal. All giraffe have it. He's very nicely framed there by the tree, don't you think, David? Yes, yes. He's attempting to give you an opportunity at composition. And in the background there, the grey-headed bushshrike. The spookfool, or ghost bird. I think he lives in the camp, the ghost bird, you know, David? Yeah. The same chap that steals the salty cracks. Cheryl, you're in Washington State, where I hope it isn't raining too much today, and you want to know the jeepers, I'm going to get very irritated just now. Cheryl, you want to know the horns serve a purpose. Cheryl, they do. They're there for fighting. And, I mean, they don't use them extensively for fighting, but you can see they're bald on the top, and that's from him crashing his head into the head and neck of other giraffes, and I think those horns provide him with a certain amount of protection and do a certain amount of damage. Look at that tongue, it's unbelievable. They do a certain amount of damage, I think, to the their rivals. They're not sharp, so they don't do an enormous kind of damage, but they do create probably bruising and protect the skull. Now, there's something going on just to the west of where we're now sitting, so that's to the right hand side of where I'm sitting. There's some alarm calling of birds, a francolin and a few others. Now what that means is that there's some kind of predator, I suspect an avian predator, so perhaps a sparrowhawk or even an eagle. And I think that rather than, say, a leopard, because the giraffe has not reacted. Yes, and now the grey go-away birds are having a bit of a call. Hello Wendy, you're wondering about what noises a giraffe makes while we listen to the noises of the birds around here. Wendy, they make a bellowing sort of gurgle when they're deeply distressed, which is quite intimidating to listen to. Then, mostly, they communicate with infrasound, so the same kind of low frequency sounds that elephants make to each other, so giraffe do the same. And that, if you live in thick bush, is very effective, because it tends to, the lower the sound, or the lower the frequency of the sound, the more easily it travels through a thick bush. And then they can also make a sort of snorting alarm call. They do that sort of thing. But it's the distressed sort of burbling, gurgling bellow that they make that is the most impressive sound, but it hardly ever happens. Now, David, we're being approached, stalked, one might say, by a terrifying francolin. He's being very confiding. I tell you what, everybody, one of the best things you can ever do in the bush is to come into one spot and just sit still and see what comes around. I think so often we're driving around the place looking for things when if we just sat still we'd probably see just about as much. There's a crested francolin, everyone, looking for seeds and bugs and things to eat. Right, shall we move on, David? Let us just gently ease our way down the river here. Alright, while we go down here, Jamie, I know, has been hot on the trail of a male lion. Let's go and find out how that's going.
I'm not sure I would have described it as hot on the trail, but you never know. The tracks were coming in this direction and they've moved into a very, very dense block that the lions have loved. It's between Gallagher Shortcut and Aubrey's Road. Now, I've checked this particular road now 3 times. There are no lion tracks coming across here, so we're narrowing it down slowly but surely. I know that Aubrey is helping us, as is Wrexham. Oh, clouds of dust. We are on a main access road. And we'll just nip past December here. Hello, again.
Put one wheel left.
One wheel gone.
Break.
Good luck. Sorry guys, let me just jump on the radio to Aubrey. Standing by.
Ja, 3 madodanga na ito pursuit.
Copy, thanks. I'm on Aubrey's now. I'll see you in a bit. Okay. And now we're talking. Aubrey has managed to find those lions and they're on this road, which is good news. Means we were on the right track. We were probably about 2 seconds away from... We were 2 seconds away from finding them. We really were. Awesome! What a fantastic way to start off our sunrise safari. So they weren't between the two roads, they were on the road. Hello, boys. How wonderful. It's been a while since we've seen the Birmingham boys together. I think it's just 3 of them. Oh, it's my favourite Birmingham boy. Hello, boy. Let's just stop here, just because there's 2 vehicles on either side, so we don't want to make them feel uncomfortable and trapped. There we go. 1 fast asleep. 2 fast asleep. Or sort of semi-fast asleep. The one in the middle is my favourite. I don't know why. There's something about his facial expression that I just find quite endearing. For new viewers, I'd like to... Oh, flop. I'd like to introduce you. This is the one that James calls Skinny Pom Pom, isn't it? I can't remember what number that's meant to be, but this is the Birmingham boy that James has nicknamed Skinny Pom Pom because the tuft on the end of his tail is relatively small. It almost looks as though he's lost a little bit of it. So yes, for new viewers, I would like to introduce you to the Birmingham males, the dominant male lions of this area. There's actually 4 of them that move about in a male lion coalition. We've only got 3 here at the moment, which makes total sense. They often separate and then come together once again when it comes time to patrol territorial boundaries, perhaps interact with the females a little bit, make sure that they put on a very strong show of defense so that no other male lions feel as though they are entitled to make their way in to this particular spot. And with front paws the size of side plates, they are definitely a force to be reckoned with. Those magnificent paws. Absolutely massive. Of course, a lot of the time whenever we see lions, in general, especially male lions, they are fast asleep. But these males have probably been walking kilometers during the course of last night, roaring, scent marking. The male lion, despite having a reputation as being something of a lazy animal, does have an enormous amount of work to do in order to keep a territory safe from other lions. And these guys have been drinking, I think, by the look of that mane. He's got muck all over underneath his chin, and I think it's mud. It could also have been from a carcass. They might have had a small kill last night. It's hard to tell. I think that's mud, though. Filthy dirty. And definitely not in the mood to move anywhere. So for Lucy in Indiana and all the other people who send through updates about lions roaring at the pan, or close to the pan, that you could hear on the damn camera, these 3 were probably responsible for that noise. Just giving a cursory glance to where we could move, because at the moment our view is limited. I wonder if these gentlemen plan on spending the rest of their day here. It's still cool enough.
Morning session at the north.
Good morning, Andrew, and welcome back. Sorry, everybody. Excuse me. I wonder where the 4th Birmingham boy is. They've got enormous territory. They've got an enormous territory now they cover, extending all the way into the property to the north of us, so Buffelshoek, then Djuma, a little bit of Simbambili and Arathusa, Torchwood, Cheetah Plains, and Coral, and right down towards Mala as well. So they've got probably close to 8,000, 10,000 hectares that they need to patrol. And splitting up makes imminent sense. Once again, the breeze starting to pick up. Yesterday was incredibly windy, and I think today is going to prove to be no different. Can't decide whether it's blowing in a cold front or it's just going to get hotter. I know James mentioned that it's probably going to be blisteringly warm. So the question on everybody's lips now is, where are the Nkuhumas? We've got the 3 Birmingham boys. The pride of Nkuhumas, the 5 females with their 8 cubs, are probably somewhere in the vicinity as well. And for the most part, there's a sort of a misconception about lions that a male lion has one pride that they stay with the entire time. That is not the case. A dominant coalition like the Birmingham boys will have a couple of different prides that they will move between and then move off on their own. So they don't have a particular group of females that they stay with. I can't believe how close we were to finding these guys. They were basically around the corner. Oh, one of them's up. Oh, he's talking a little bit. Where are you going, boy? Huh. Wonder where he's off to. Just want to make sure he's not roaring, and then I'll move. Now, speaking of the Birmingham Males coalitions, Shamsun, you were wondering whether or not it's been confirmed that the Birminghams have a coalition, or a 3rd pride that they associate with. I had heard reports that from one of the other guides, that they were seen with the Talamati pride, which hangs out towards the sort of the eastern section. Hello, boy. You up as well? Here he goes. He's up and moving. So towards the eastern section of this area, Torchwood and then the Kruger National Park. Oh, that doesn't look comfortable at all. That really doesn't look comfortable. You can actually hear it scraping. A risky choice there. So what he's doing is spraying and scent marking that particular bush and then scraping with his feet so that the urine spreads onto the pads of his foot and then allows him to walk off and carry his scent a little bit further into the bush. Like our one male lion has just done. Hey, sleepyhead. Your buddies are leaving. Up you get. No. Maybe he slept like we did last night. He's not interested in this whole getting up and moving business. I, on the other hand, am. I just want to see where these lions are going. So while we attempt to... Oh, goodness, I can smell him now. While we attempt to keep up with these lions, it's going to get very dense. Let's go across to James for an update, and we'll stick with our male lions.
Skinny Pom Pom, everybody. I'm glad he's made a return. We have found absolutely nothing since I last saw you. Well, that's not strictly true. We did find an orange-breasted bushshrike, and David got the camera on him, and he went... And then he looked at us and lifted a virtual middle finger and disappeared. And we were unable to show him to you, so I do apologize for that on his behalf. Recalcitrant, rude, nasty little bird that he was. I hope he finds nothing to eat today. That's a little bitter, perhaps. We've come now onto Leadwood Road, and we're going towards Bivelshoek Dam. And the reason we're going towards Bivelshoek Dam is because Aubrey had some very fresh, he said, male leopard tracks heading that way. So I don't know, very fresh male leopard tracks can very quickly turn into a wild goose chase because they do disappear so very fast. But we'll put ourselves into a position where if it does pop out, we're able to see him. So that's the general idea as we drive through what can only be described as a fairly, well, it's a fairly drought and elephant damaged area, but I'm just trying to give you an impression of how I feel about it. It's not bad. It just feels like, well, it feels a bit like when you say that there's a wonderful Zulu expression that goes, "Uchani obulele buvuswa ngumlilo." I'm going to say that again for you, David, so that you might repeat it. Uchani obulele buvuswa ngumlilo. Uchani obulele buvuswa ngumlilo. All right, which means the grass that has been sleeping is woken by the fire. And it's a really nice expression that basically refers to the natural process by which I was describing yesterday. The new green flush of grass is created through the burning of the old grass. Now, and very much, and it's used as an expression to say that, the tough times make you stronger and bring out the good. And, will bring out a new beginning. And that's exactly what's going on here with this drought and the fact that the elephants have pushed over so many trees and opened up new spaces. When the rain comes, it's going to open up a whole new kind of, thousands of new little habitats. New patches of grass are going to grow, new seedlings are going to grow. And so, uchani obulele buvuswa ngumlilo. In this case, the trees that have been knocked over by the elephants, they too shall be born anew. I'm not sure that works as well as the Zulu expression. We're now on the far eastern boundary, everybody, looking for a Singapore noodle stand. The reason I refer to Singapore noodles is because I read a book once called McCarthy's Bar, and McCarthy's Bar was written by a chap called Pete McCarthy, who has unfortunately died, and he was unquestionably the funniest writer I ever read, and he was a travel writer, and everywhere he went he used to look for a Singapore noodle stand, and that was how he judged he judged a place by the standard of the Singapore noodles. There is a donkey. It's obviously not a donkey, everybody. We know that, David. Why?
Because it's a waterbuck.
No, donkeys don't have horns. You see, this one's got horns on it, so it isn't a donkey. But I think you're right. It is a waterbuck on account of the fact that it has a white ring on its buttocks. Now, in the Mara, I've said that a lot in the last week, the waterbuck there is called a Defassa waterbuck, and it looks identical to this one, except for that very distinctive white mark on the bottom. It doesn't have that at all, which is quite interesting. I wonder where this fellow's friends are. He shouldn't really be alone at his age. Young, rebellious teenage waterbuck, out on his own. And eating the last bits of grass. And as I keep saying, I don't think these guys are doing nearly as badly in this supposedly dire drought as I thought they were going to. I do think we as human beings are very quick to decide that things are bad and dire and difficult, and shouldn't we be feeding the animals, putting out salt licks, dropping lucerne bales, pumping water, when in actual fact the animals here just get on with it just fine. And quite apart from sitting here looking only at that waterbuck, it's a good idea perhaps just to have a bit of a listen at this time of the morning. But I don't know, I said to Dave as the sun came up, I said, you watch, this golden hour is going to be 3 minutes today. Now golden hour refers to the time of the day when people like David and his ilk like to film, because the light is soft and gorgeous and anything it sits upon looks amazing. But today it's going to be 34 degrees Celsius, everybody. That is pushing 90 Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, it may be even more than 90. And the light has gone from gold to white almost immediately. Shall I click again like that, Dave? It's quite loud. 94 degrees Fahrenheit today, only the 6th day of spring. Let us forge ahead fearlessly, David. Let us not be afraid. Hello, Sandy. I have to confess that I'm going to disagree with you here. You say the sun comes up very fast, but have I noticed it goes down much more slowly? I actually haven't. I've noticed it going down at, well, pretty much the same speed, I think. Once we catch it on the horizon like that, it seems to sink almost at the same speed. Sandy, I'd be interested to know why you think it, perhaps in your part of the world it does sink a bit more slowly, but here I think it's pretty much the same. David is nodding, so I'm not mad. So Sandy, if you don't agree with me, then you have to not agree with David as well. David has just got out of bed, of course, so maybe his brain isn't working. I knocked on his window. I said, David? Oh, yes, he said. You know that sound when somebody's just woken up and they know they should be up? He says, am I late? Well, yes. Ah, now the male leopard tracks have crossed into Buffelshoek, which is very kind of them. Anyway, let's carry on up here. We might be lucky. I'm going to actually, on the back of that news, I think I'm going to turn around and head back towards the southern boundary and see if we can't find sign of Karula. Let's go and get an update from Jamie and her lion following, see how that's going, and I'll see you on the southern boundary.
Lion following is going particularly well, and look at this incredible scene in front of us. All three of them stopping, scraping their feet, scent marking their territory. Absolutely magnificent. Nothing quite like a coalition of big male lions. Quite awe-inspiring. As you can see, walking right past the vehicle, on a mission. Apparently they've been chasing buffalo all night. And you can see they look hungry, that flap of skin around their abdomen. They could most definitely do with a meal. But it's obviously been an exhausting night, and whilst one of them is still dedicated and on a mission and scent marking, the others have decided that it's time for a quick rest. Flop. One tail there, and the other's just given up completely over there. Beautiful. Now, if they continue on the line that they are going on, they are going to cross into Simbambili. We're getting very, very close to the boundary now. We've still got them nice and out in the open. It looks as though they're on their way there. Rexon tells me that he encountered a buffalo with quite a serious limp earlier this morning, and he thinks that perhaps it had a lucky escape. And Andrew, speaking of the Birmingham boys and their sort of split between the different prides, you were wondering how it is they split their attention between the different groups. And the answer is, without any real set pattern, if there's a female in estrus, then obviously that pride automatically becomes very interesting. So in other words, if she is ready to mate, then the male lions will definitely be paying more attention to her and that particular pride, often to the point that they block her and separate her from the rest of the group. And it also will depend upon food as well. If one of the prides has managed to catch something, then without a doubt the male lion, if it happens to be in the vicinity and happens to know about it, then they will go racing off in that direction and then usually take the lion's share of that particular kill. Other than that, it's just where they happen to find themselves at the time and when they happen to encounter each other. And Sandy, a very, very salient question. Or are angry elephants? A very, very salient question coming through from Sandy, which was, if we talk about how the lions don't recognize us as a threat, excuse me, when we are sitting in the vehicle, then how is it safe to have a tracker or sitting on the front of the vehicle? And the answer is basically it's just what they have become accustomed to. So the animals have grown up with a human being sitting on the tracker seat. If William, who is Aubrey's wonderful tracker, if he were to jump off now, it would be a vastly different reaction, obviously. As you know, they react very, very differently to people on foot. Oh, up again. Empty-bellied boys. On a mission. So it's just basically a factor of what they've been used to when they've grown up, because certain lodges do not allow the tracker to sit on the front of the vehicle in big cat sightings or in big 5 sightings. The tracker will have to get off before the vehicle can make an approach to those particular animals, and it's just a matter of policy, because obviously the tracker is a little bit more exposed there. So in certain areas you'll find that the animals will react with a level of discomfort if they see a person sitting on the front of the vehicle. But for our animals of the Slaby Sand, because they are so used to people sitting on the front of the vehicle, it's not so much of a problem. Okay, let's go and catch up with our lions. Which way are we going to go? Now ideally, because it is such an open area, I want to try and follow behind Aubrey so that we don't cause too much damage with our off-road tracks. As you know, the grass cover is negligible, so we just want to make sure that we do as little damage as possible. So while we catch up with our lions, let's jump on board with James for a quick update.
Just through there, everybody, in amongst the trees. What do you see, David? Oh, impala. Very nice. Very important antelope in this particular area. And they will be suffering slightly as a result of this dry weather because they're highly water dependent. David, was that your stomach or a lion growling behind us? You see, you have to have your coffee in the morning. That's why it pays to get out of bed on time. Can you see, everyone, how that light has gone, immediately it's gone white? They're not shining that sort of coppery colour. It's very much harsher than it is normally at this time of the day. And you know, I woke up this morning and I thought it must be cloudy because it was so warm. I didn't have to put my gown on today, David. I just went straight to the bathroom, crunching across the sand. I have spoken a lot of nonsense in the last 2 days. I do apologise, everybody. I think I might be going mad. Alright, I didn't actually turn south. I thought we'd just come along and see if the Nkuhumas hadn't perhaps come along to Buffelshoek Dam. Safaridine, you want to know which animal has the longest scientific name? The hippo must be quite close. Hippopotamus amphibius. I imagine there are probably some insects and things that have longer ones. Elephants don't, lions don't, leopards don't, buffalo don't. White rhino, Cercopithecus simum, that's quite long, but I don't think it beats Hippopotamus amphibius. Yes, I'm going to go with the hippo. Hippopotamus amphibius. Kudu, Tragelaphus spicatus, that's quite long. What else? Impala, Epsirus melampus, that's not very long. Hippopotamus amphibius, yes. I'd say the 9 syllables of the hippopotamus give it the longest Latin name that I know of out here. There are probably a couple of birds and obscure insects that have longer ones. Well, let's go with the hippo. Any debate there? Happy to hear from you. #Safari Live question at WildEarth.tv. Whenever I say that, I feel I have to say it like the people who read those advertisements, and they have to do the terms, conditions apply as quickly as possible. So let's just pop to the dam here and see if the ninkapumas haven't come out during the course of the night. They were seen obviously without the cubs earlier on, and I wonder if those cubs weren't left exactly where we saw them yesterday. Ah, here we are, David. I know I don't know why it feels like there should be things here, even though there's absolutely no moisture left. But maybe we'll be lucky. Switch off, roll down, Dave. Hopefully the brakes won't fail and drop us in the water. Hello Justin, thank you for asking me a question to which I do not know the answer. There's a great array of life here, isn't there, David? One doesn't really know where to look. Justin, you want to know what the origin is of the hippopotamus's name? Well, amphibious, I'm going to guess. Someone clever in the audience is absolutely going to tell you. I'm just going to pick some flowers quickly. Amphibious obviously refers to its habit of being an amphibian, so it lives in the water and on the land. Hippo, as far as I mean, hippo means horse in Latin. So the hippotragus antelope are the horse-like antelope. And so hippo means horse, hippopotamus. There must be big somewhere in there, I think. And hippopotamus, I don't know. That's as close as I can get. So let's put it out to the viewers, who will almost certainly, someone will know where it comes from. Hippopotamus amphibius. Now, David, I've given these flowers to Brian. I feel it only fair that I give them to you. You haven't smelt them yet. Oh, just take a smell of that.
Oh, it's lovely.
It is lovely, isn't it? Yes. Now take a deep breath in, everybody, right now. Tell me what you smell. It's a bit like jasmine. It's much softer than that, though. And a little bit more spicy, perhaps. It is really gorgeous. My favourite smell of this time of the year. That's a knobthorn, by the way, in case you were wondering. I better plug myself in so that Kirsten can shout at me when she needs to. There we are. And there's a knobthorn, and there's some new green leaves on it, actually. Very nice. Spring sprung, but there's no grasses riz just yet. That will have to wait for the rain. Ah, Raisa, good one. Yes, you say, what about the giraffe's scientific name? Giraffa camelolepardalis. Giraffa camelolepardalis. There might be 10 syllables there, if I have remembered it correctly. Ah, the hippopotamus amphibious has been pipped to the post by Giraffa camelolepardalis. Well done. Thank you, Raisa. Ah, thank you very much. That's right, it's a river horse. I should have known that. Kevin Catfish, you say hippo does mean horse, potamus means, or hippopotamus, yes, means river. So, hippopotamus, river horse. I should have remembered that. River horse, amphibious. Right, the lions are still around. Unfortunately, they're doing now what lions do best on a hot day, fast asleep, but let's go and have a look regardless.
And still with our sleeping Panthera leos. The easiest of all the Latin names out here, I think. The Birmingham boys have decided that this is the best possible snoozing spot. Nice shade. There's no buffalo around. Obviously the buffaloes escaped them. And now is the time for a bit of a rest. Which is most unfortunate because I just called across to the different guides that traverse Simbambili and those areas to say that the lions were on their way to them. Unfortunately now I'm going to have to disappoint and tell them that the lions have very much gone fast asleep on Juma. Couple of old niggling injuries there. You can see a puncture wound on the tail and around the leg. Those are old injuries and they're going to heal up relatively quickly and relatively easily. Life of a male lion is a bit rough. They're either scrapping with each other over food or females, or they're being shouted at by the females if they've overstepped the boundary ever so slightly. They're constantly covered in nicks and scratches and usually have a bit of a limp as well. And that one has got a pile of ticks at the junction of his leg there. Oof, that's uncomfortable looking. That probably is an injury. Ooh, that's a little bit gross, isn't it? It could be an injury or just a patch where he's got a bit of a skin fungal disease or a bit of mange, and the ticks have just decided to target that particular spot because it's more sensitive. All the skin is thinner. And there we go. The magnificent male lions are fast asleep. They are looking very empty-bellied. They could do with a meal. The Birmingham boys, of course, are renowned buffalo hunters. We've heard stories of them positively massacring buffalo herds, catching 3 or 4 or 5 young buffalo at a time and sitting feeding off them. There was a period of time when we were, at the start of the year, when it was incredibly dry. Sorry, just hold on one moment. The poor people in the west who are desperate to see lions are trying to call me. I'm standing by. Affirmative, sorry. No sign of movement. Flat, flat. They just wanted an update as to whether or not their heads were up or whether they were in sort of radio terms, which is a mixture of different languages, whether they are lala completely, and they are definitely lala. They couldn't be more lala if they tried. Completely flat, heads down. So often lions will just sit and rest with their heads up, looking in the direction that they're about to get up and move. This is not the case here. Oh yes, I know what I was talking about. The fact that sort of at the beginning of the year when it was at its driest and was incredibly warm. One of the only places that the animals could go for water was 3-in-a-row Pan on Cheetah Plains. And the Birmingham boys basically set up camp there. And it was where poor buffalo came to die, because they had to go and drink, and the Birmingham boys would start for eating one, not actually finish it, and move on to the next one. So there's this idea that male lions are completely incapable of looking after themselves. That is not true. They are proficient hunters, and in fact are incredibly useful for lion prides when it comes to taking down big animals like buffalo and giraffe. So they can hunt for themselves. They just, if they see an opportunity for a free meal, much like what Tingana did to Karula a couple of days ago, then they will take it. Dino in Washington State was looking at the way that the lions walk and was wondering if there's any kind of genetic advantage to the way that their paws turn inwards when they walk, perhaps an adaptation for grabbing prey, for example. I'm trying to think about the slightly inwards tilt. I mean, when you look at their tracks, their paws always look as though they're almost straight on. One thing that you will notice, and maybe this is to do with the way that their foot falls, is when lions put their feet down, they start on the side of the foot and they roll their foot down. It's quite a sort of a quick movement. It's very, very subtle. But that gentle roll, oh, thank you, boy, give us a demonstration there. The gentle roll downwards is a way of walking silently, or increasing the chance of walking silently. The same reason why their tracks often register, their feet register when they're walking at a normal pace. It just means that they disturb less leaves and sticks and anything else that makes a noise. So that's, I think, and you'll probably find that's the reason behind the slightly inward-facing paws. It's just the way that they fall for silence. That would be the most important adaptation that I can think of. A lion's paw is the most magnificent thing. What we tend to think of as their knee is, of course, their wrist or their ankle. They've got what's known as digitigrade foot posture, which I don't know, I always find utterly fascinating because it's so different to ours. With their extended carpals and tarsals, there we go. Had a blank moment for a second. Tarsals and carpals stretching out a little bit, and that's essentially where that leg curves. That is the animal's ankle. They're incredibly extended feet. That's basically them walking on their tiptoes to make as little noise as possible. And the same goes for leopards, hyenas, wild dogs. And a valid question from David in Napa as the lion's tail twitches. He wants to know, what do they use their tails for if they don't really climb? They can still use them for balance, so especially when they're running after prey, trying to change direction, then that tail can act like a little bit of a rudder. Not quite to the same extent that it would in a cheetah, for example, but it's still incredibly useful. It also serves a very, very important function in terms of visual communication. So the animal... One of the main ways that animals talk to each other, tail and ears and facial expression. Those are the three main aspects of their body language. So a tail thrashing will communicate disgruntlement or anger or aggression. There's an old story that the lions have a spur on the end of their tail and that they use that to whip themselves into a fury before a fight. That, of course, is not true. It's not the case. The thrashing tail is just, as I said, to indicate aggression. So while our lions snooze away, I don't think that they're going to be up anytime soon. Let's go across to James, who has got most definitely my favourite pigeon species.
There is the African green pigeon, everybody, and before I forget the actual word, Parastratia sphecomeia sphecomyoides. That's Parastratia sphecomeia Sphecomyoides, apparently the longest Latin name of any animal. Thank you, Janet, for that. It is a species of fly. And apparently it means near soldier wasp fly. That's the genus name. And the and the specific name means wasp fly-like. Very nice. Parastratia sphecomia sphecomyoides. What a load of... I mean, who came up with that, really? Anyway, there's a green pigeon. No idea what its Latin name is. We could figure it out. We're not going to. And he's just rather gorgeous colour. And of course, the most interesting thing about him, I think, is that he isn't actually green. Did you know that, David?
No, I think not.
You see that?
I think so.
Really? You shouldn't be able to see it. You should... he looks greenish, but he's actually got different... The barbs of his feathers are alternately yellow and blue. And as we know from our nursery school finger painting class, David, what happens when you mix yellow and blue paint?
A bit of green.
Yes, a touch of green. And that is why the bird is green. I think that's rather amazing. And he's a frugivore, ideally. So lots of them have been found in the jackalberries that have been fruiting at the moment. And this one just enjoying the first rays of the day. He won't be enjoying them for long because, of course, it will become, well, quite unpleasant to be out in the open air or the open sun later today. You really don't think he looks green, Dave?
I thought his breast looked a bit more grey.
Yes, it does look a bit greyish. But that's why he doesn't always look green. It's because he isn't actually. The only bird that I know of out here that has a green pigment in its feathers is the lory, or the turricos, and we don't really get them up here, but down on the Sand River you'll get the purple-crested lory, or purple-crested turrico, and they've actually got green pigment in their feathers. But I think they're the only ones. Oh, and the parrots. That's right, the brown-headed parrot, whose most obvious feature is his bright green back. Dive-bombed by a pigeon. What a day. Shall we carry on, David?
Yes, please.
Would you like to say Parastratia sphecomia sphecomyoides?
I'd rather not.
Okay. Reminds me, of course, of the great day of the long words. I was traipsing about Arathusa, finding absolutely nothing at all. And I don't know how we got on to long words, but somebody sent through a word that took me a very long time to learn, and that was hippopotomonstrosesquipedalophobia, which, as far as I'm aware, is the terror of long words. We're heading back towards the south now. We've done a great big full loop sort of round Buffelshoek Dam, and I'm afraid not a great deal has arrived to show their presence. We saw one male lion track, but I think given that 4 or 3 of the Birminghams are lurking about with Jamie and Aubrey, I think it's quite possible that that track came from there. Here are some starlings, David. Birchall's starlings. Mandy, while we're trying to look at these starlings, which are now flown away, silhouetted as they were, there we go. Mandy, you want to know about Karula and cubs, and has there been an update? You haven't been watching for a while. Yes, there has. Unbelievable sighting last week of 5 leopards in one sighting. That was with Jamie. 2 cubs, Shadow, Tingana and Karula in the same sighting, and well, then there were some hyena and wild dogs as well, just to toss it into the mix. And what happened was the cubs hid, and then Karula took them south the next morning, and they haven't been back north since then. So by south I mean into Little Gowrie, and that's why we're going to do a little boundary patrol to the south. Now, we were talking about green pigment, and there is no green pigment in that bird, and I know that that might sound ridiculous if you haven't actually seen a Birchall starling with the sun shining on it from the other side, but they look greenish, or green and blue and iridescent sort of purple, and that none of that colour. The only pigment that that bird has in its body is black. It's melanin. And the different crystals of melanin are arranged sort of around air sacs and different, it's quite complicated arrangements in the actual feathers. And the way the light reflects off them gives the colour. So they absorb wavelengths of light that they don't reflect, and that's why the bird looks blue and purple and green depending on the light that you look at it. So no pigment other than black there, which I think is amazing. Kimberline, you say, do birds ever get claw cramps? No, I don't think they do, and I'll tell you why I don't think they do. A cramp is caused, of course, by a muscle that is overused. It becomes tired, it loses, I think it's potassium as the main... Sorry, Davy, there's a little bird there that doesn't have claw cramp, just sitting on a stick, isolated out in the open. Can you see it there? No, on a stick. Isolated in the open. Can you see it over there? Well done. You got him. I think it's a rattling oh. I think it was a rattling cisticola. They never sit like that. Kimber, so like I say, I think muscles cramps are caused by physiological response to overuse, and I think the overuse of, or the lack of potassium, and I stand to correction, so if you think I'm wrong there, tell me. But what a bird does, of course, when it lands, it doesn't actually use its claw, it doesn't use its muscles. It's a totally sort of automatic response to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've read that there's a tendon sort of, I mean, for want of a better descriptor, between those two digits, and what happens is that when any weight touches that tendon, the foot clamps shut automatically. So it's not actually a muscle response. It doesn't have to sit there and hold on like you and I might if we were hanging from a tree. So I don't think they do get any claw or toe cramp. That's my guess. It's purely a guess, though. Relatively educated guess, I'd say, David. It wasn't a wild guess. Alright, the lions are still around with Jamie. Let's go and have a look at them and enjoy their slumber.
It's high action here. There was some paw twitching and I think the odd ear moved, and at one point this male lion opened his eyes slightly. That was about it, wasn't it, Brian? That's about it. I think what we will probably do is, over the next few moments, we'll spend the next few minutes with them, and then we will leave these males and go off in search of other things, perhaps go and see if we can't find the lionesses. They just look so terribly contented and not like they are going anywhere at all. Oh. One head up, one head back down again. It's tough. Tough being a male lion. And of course, of all of the animals out here, they are probably the ones that can sleep with the most sense of comfort. There's not all that much out here that's of any kind of serious risk to them except another male lion, and they generally know where those are. And especially when there's 3 of them in a group like this, they feel pretty much untouchable. Even an elephant herd that might decide to chase them, they know that all they would have to do is get up and move off. And when it comes down to it, oh, my goodness me. Yes, when it comes down to it, they know they can outrun an elephant. So that's one of the reasons why nothing looks quite as comfortable when they sleep as a male lion does. I wish I had slept like this last night. They do look absolutely beautiful, though, in the morning sunlight. Their whiskers catching the glints of the rays. And that beautiful golden colour. When we look at them now, comfortable and secure in their dominance, it's hard to believe that they're the same male lions that we saw coming in over a year ago now, when they first conducted their territorial takeover. Perfectly secure in their sense of comfort. What has been interesting is that they haven't, the reason that the other guides are so desperate, not desperate, but the reason that the other guides on the western side of Triple M are so keen to see male lions is that they actually haven't seen them move in that area for a considerable period of time. And one of the big explanations that's been put forward by some of the other guides there is the fact that that hyena clan is so incredibly, I'm not quite sure what the word would be. Well, first of all, they've just got an enormous advantage of numbers. There's close to 40-odd hyenas in the Elephant Plains Zimbabwe hyena clan. They took down an adult giraffe, just to give you an idea of just how intimidating these hyena truly are. And it seems to be one of the reasons, definitely the reason why the Nkuhumas have not been straying into that side, since Elephant Plains Zimbabwe Arathusa, it's all part of the Nkuhuma's home range, but they're definitely not taking their little cubs anywhere near that spot at the moment. And it seems as though the hyenas are even intimidating enough to keep the Birmingham boys centered around this area, although I think it's more to do with the fact that they're spending more time with the prides and their cubs, basically shrinking their home range slightly so that they make sure that the cubs are defended. It's amazing what kind of a role instinct plays in terms of governing a male lion's behavior. Nobody taught these Birmingham boys how to be the dominant males of an area, and certainly it took them a little while to learn. Not to put too fine a point on it, but the whole mating process was a bit confusing to them in the beginning. But they've certainly grown into their own. The breeze gently blowing the mane. Head up again. Anything interesting? And back down again. Well, before we start to move on, I think that there are other vehicles that would like to come and join the sighting. Yesterday, we had Steve the stick insect hitching a ride in my vehicle. Today it is Mandy the moth. I don't know where the name Mandy came from, it just popped into my head. Come here. Beautifully camouflaged moth species of some description. There you go. Have a look at this guy. Isn't it beautiful? Oh, there we go. How awesome is that? We're also just really enjoying playing with the new camera. I can put things right up to the camera screen, although provided I don't have the shakes. I'm trying to keep my hands still bright, I promise. The caffeine shakes kicking in. Our moth gently blowing in the wind. And we're starting slowly but surely as summer starts to see more and more in the way of insect life. I put Steve the stick insect back. I'm trying to see which moth this is. I put Steve the stick insect back where I think he originated from, which was just outside the parking lot. And Mandy the moth, I think, probably came from somewhere similar. She's got a beautiful shimmer to her if you get her in the right light, but I have no idea which particular moth species she is. There are so many different types. I will tell you that this is a moth very clearly adapted to living on bark. You can see that instantly from her camouflage. Even with this little bit of texturing over here. You look around here at the top of her. Basically meant to look exactly like a little nodule of bark. Okay. Oh, pop our moth back down onto my jacket. I don't want to get out of the car. Bye, moth. Moth flew away. has wings, unlike our stick insect. Right, well, we leave our male lions and see what else we can find. Let's head across to James for an update.
We have a zebra, everybody, obviously. Nothing else can be confused with the animal you're looking at now. Isn't that nice? Say it, David. I know you want to.
I can't do it, James.
I can't do it either. So we will just leave it there. There's a drongo following them, picking up little bits and pieces. And I've just had a report from Chitwa that Karula, I haven't found any tracks coming up north here. So they are around still, probably in Little Gowrie, which is a bit sad. But we'll keep trying. Let's see what else we can see as these zebra make their way onto Djuma. That's Djuma to the right hand side of your picture, and it's Little Gowrie to the left hand side of your picture. There we are. Very nice, David, well done. I didn't get any picture today because the light is too harsh. And apparently one of the Birmingham boys has been mating on Buffels Hook, was mating all night long last night, so that's quite interesting. That's very interesting actually, because weren't all 5 of the Nkuhumas sitting at the pan last night? So one of them has split off, unless the Birminghams have found someone else. Good morning. Good, how are you going? Good. Anything to report?
No, we think Tandy is in the not Tandy Karula.
It was in here.
Maybe, although we did just see female tracks crossing north.
Did you? Okay.
Tandy is about to cross Gowrie Main onto Chitwa.
Okay. Alright. Enjoy there. Cool. We've got nothing else, I'm afraid, going on. Okay. Enjoy. That's good news. Did you hear that, everybody? Apparently, tracks of a female leopard going north. Now, Kyle, you want to look for a lilac-breasted roller. Kyle, absolutely we can look for a lilac-breasted roller. A lot easier than looking for Karula. What we're going to do, given that she may have crossed north, is head up this road, and I know that there is perhaps a nest of a lilac-breasted roller up this road here. So that's quite nice. Might we be lucky? David, might we be lucky? That would be so nice. We shall turn north now and see. Bit of a wind coming up. And Andrew, you want to know what the Latin name for a zebra is? It is Equus quagga. And then, well, that's the kind of Latin name, and then depends on the subspecies. So this one is the Birchall zebra, so it's Equus quagga birchelli. And if you go up to Vamara, then you can see the Grant's zebra, which is Equus quagga bohemi. David, there seems to be a fairly strong wind coming up. It's blowing my shirt off. That won't do at all. There we are. I've reattached it to itself. Now, there should be a lilac-breasted roller on one of these dead trees over here. I think they are setting up a nest in this vicinity. A very strange wind that has come up. There's one. Yes. So nice when your guesses come out correctly. See? Now that's not the best picture of a lilac-breasted roller because it is a little bit silhouetted in the sun. But that is a lilac-breasted roller. And you can see that immediately from those long streamers out the back of the tail, the little tooth on the bill, and just sort of what they call it, general impression, size and shape. and just holding on tightly. Now, we were talking about the cramp in the claws there. Can you imagine if you had to hold on, use the muscles to not fall off that branch? It would be extremely sore, because eventually there would be muscle fatigue. But you can see there, or maybe you can't see it, but it is clear that that perching that bird is doing is not actually consuming energy. The balance will be, and the nerves and muscles and the interaction between them required to make sure that he doesn't sort of overbalance. Well, that's pretty sophisticated. But the actual muscle holding on of where he's sitting, I think, is probably very limited. They, of course, do have the most unattractive calls in the bush. There's another one calling just off to the left-hand side of your screen, and that's why this chap is making the odd attempt at a song. There, you can hear one. Wah, 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 wah. Giving rise, of course, to their wonderful Shangaan name, David. Veve. Veve. Because they go wah, 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 wah. We asked the other day what is the most difficult bird to imitate. I suppose the lilac-breasted roller must be quite close up there, because it is such a squawk. Hello James Richard, you're wondering about nomadic bird species, which are distinct from migratory species in that they don't move predictably or with seasons. And you say, are there any nomadic bird species we can hope to see during the spring? Well, James Richard, I suppose the most obvious one would be the wattled starling. They are nomadic, but they don't necessarily come with the spring. You know, they can come any time at all. So wattled starling would be one. Then I would be quite excited to see something completely nondescript, like a lark, like bunting. It's called a lark-like bunting, which is a sort of nondescript brown bird. But I remember it during a particularly wet season up at Ngala. They came through one year and then disappeared again. So that would be quite a nice one to see. And I doubt anybody's got the lark-like bunting on their bird list. And just around here, of course, was where the pearl-spotted owlet couple lived for some time, and I think they have moved off, because I tried to call them while I was here the other day. We'll try once more here. I embarrassed myself horribly by forgetting how to whistle. Alright, let's stop here and give it a go. Now we listen. There, it's right there. Now, David, you see the tree, the fallen down tree? Just behind it, there's a bush, and sitting on the bush, on one of the branches, tilting to the right. Now, up, up, to the left, up, to the right, zoom, up, there. There it is, you got it. There he is. How cool is that? And he looks like he's just been woken up. He's supposed to be sleeping in the day. Oh, that's wonderful. I can't believe it worked out. Look at the eyes on the back of his head. Here he comes. That is wonderful. So there are two of them here, and I think they're probably trying to set up a little nest, and they're desperately trying to keep the territory free of intruders. And their eyes are really sharp. So, I mean, he'll fly over where we're sitting here thinking there must be an owl there, and then he obviously won't see one, and then be deeply confused and possibly slightly embarrassed that he's been conned. How cool was that? It seldom works out like that, everybody. Now, Jesse, in Canada, we're chatting about the muscle usage in birds, and you say what uses more muscle, flapping wings to fly or perching. I'm very sure that flapping wings uses far more muscle, and depending on the bird and depending on the kind of flying that it's doing. But the muscle being used and built and the energy being expended on something like a hummingbird, which is hovering, is immense. Absolutely immense in comparison with the total energy balance of the bird itself. But that's what those muscles are designed to do. But remember, they don't have to do it all the time, and they're replacing that muscle all the time. If you're a bird that has to perch and sleep for hours on end with, sitting in one place, you can't afford to be using muscle for that. Well, you don't need to be using muscle for that. But definitely the muscles for flying far more than the muscles for perching, I'd imagine, or the energy expenditure of those muscles, except with something like an albatross, for example, which flies basically according to the wind. They do very little in the way of flapping flight. Even the vultures, they find it very difficult to get up into the air because they're so heavy, so they sit up high on the thermals and don't use a huge amount of energy to fly. Right, we're going to continue along this way, seeing if Karula hasn't popped across. Don't think she has. We'll tell you just now. Go and have an update from Jamie.
It seems as though James's streak with birds is continuing. He's been something of a bird whisperer over the last few days, between the white-browed scrub robin and now the pearl-spotted owl. Definitely doing an amazing job conversing with the different birds of Djuma. And very soon he will be having full-on conversations with them. So we've left our male lions for now, and we are basically just bumbling. We'll see what we can see what we can find. Very, very quiet out here this morning, apart from those sleepy lions. I'm not sure whether or not James updated you about the fact that Rexon saw Mvula crossing Buffelshoek boundary into Buffelshoek, or maybe I did. Can't remember now if I told you that or not. Okay, so James did keep you updated on that. So Mvula's crossed into Buffelshoek. It's nice to know that he's still around though. And you never know, he might decide to pop back to south, since we've got a little bit more water, I think, on Djuma's side towards Gowrie Pan. Not Gowrie Pan, sorry, Gallagher Pan. I thought we'd just investigate around the Balanites tree. We know that Shadow likes it here. I haven't seen any tracks of her coming back. And then I think if we don't have any luck on the western side of Djuma, then we will maybe pop onto Arathusa for the last few moments of the sunrise safari. We'll see how we go. It's impossible to plan on a live safari experience. And here we have the perfect opportunity to stop and answer Sarah in Florida's questions. Sarah in Florida would like to know what all these mounds are on the side of the road and whether or not they are man-made. And Sarah, no, they are not man-made. Oh, I got stuck inside. Wendy, it gives me a good chance to stretch my legs as well. So these are not man-made, these are termite mounds. And there's a very special type of termite called, it's just gone out of my head. it's a fungus harvesting termite, and essentially what this is the tip of an iceberg. Now you're only seeing about an eighth to a tenth of an entire termite mound structure. And what this is here is a set of very, very complex chimneys. Now this is probably not an active one. This is probably an old termite mound that has taken these termites decades to build, bringing mud up, excavating soil and mud up from below the surface of the soil and building it up into these chimneys. And then what happens is, it's basically like a set of vents. So a underground termite structure, the thing is designed to be the perfect temperature for the termites to farm a special type of fungus. And that fungus they then live in sort of a harmony with to help digest plant and wood material. But the fungus only grows at a certain temperature. And as you can imagine, with all of the hundreds of thousands of termites underneath the ground, plus the fungus growing, there's actually quite a lot of heat produced. So what these are for is they're chimneys that the termites can open up and close down at will to allow hot air to escape or to keep warm air in. So they'd keep it at a relatively constant temperature, around 32 odd degrees centigrade, which I think is about 89 in Fahrenheit. And often on a cold winter's morning on an active termite mound, if you come and you put your hand over the termite mound, you can feel warm air coming up from below the surface of the soil. Now this is a termite mound made by creatures, tiny, tiny little creatures smaller than my fingernail. Very bad idea to stick your hand into termite mound holes like this. The reason is, if you think about it, oh goodness, I'm going to go tumbling down the easiest termite mound in the world to climb. I'd never live that down. If you think about it, especially in winter when the temperatures are slightly cold, it's a nice warm spot. And what likes warm spots? Snakes like warm spots. Now you definitely don't want to go and stick your hand into a cavity of a termite mound. So Sarah, not man-made at all, made by something far smaller. And watching them, generally we watch the termite mounds, they're nocturnal termites, or they work on cloudy and cool days. And watching them go about building their termite mound is absolutely astounding to see. The way that they industriously gather little bits of mud and clump it together with their saliva, making essentially an almost rock-hard structure. This is a little one. Some of the ones on cheetah plains are absolutely gargantuan. And you can only imagine how long it took the termites to build them. Decades and decades, I think. There is a man who did an experiment where he poured concrete down into an old termite mound. It's a bit sad for the termites, but he then came back 3 weeks later and constructed it and had a look, because obviously the concrete filled all of the tunnels. And then he had a look, he excavated, and we had a sort of a really nice look into what a termite mound looks like underneath. And I'm sure you'll be able to find that on YouTube if you had a look for it. Fascinating structures, termite mounds. And we got lots of species of termites, but it is one particular fungus farming termite that builds these enormous termite mounds. And they're a crucial part of the ecosystem because, as you can imagine, they bring up soil from deep beneath the surface of the ground, and as a result you get trees growing on them because the soil's actually of a better quality than it might otherwise be. And we've got young jackalberries going here. This is actually quite a special termite mound to me. The reason it's a special termite mound to me is it served as a bolt hole or a safety point when we were out on bushwalk and 20 odd elephants came sprinting towards us for no apparent reason. And we were able to climb up onto that termite mound and hide behind the jackalberry. So that is the explanation behind termite mounds. Apparently the herd of elephants that we started with on the sunrise safari is still around on Sandy Patch. We might make our way back there. Hello guys. stopping to see whether there are any little ones with them. I know that Ali, on her interview drive, managed to find some baby Senegal lapwings. And crowned lapwings might have little ones as well, although it doesn't look like it. And these little birds, not to be underestimated. They might look harmless, but anyone who's ever accidentally walked close to their nest, including male lions, will know just how vicious they can be, or at least how protective they can be. Vicious is not the word I was really looking for, but very protective over their nests. They are lovely birds. And those of us growing up, or having had South African childhoods, walking across fields, and especially sports fields, and being attacked by crowned, what we used to call them then crowned lapwings. They're now, crowned plovers. They're now crowned lapwings. Brian, have you been attacked by them? I definitely have. Yeah. I think every South African child has had that experience growing up, where you accidentally strayed too close to their nest. It's terrifying when you're sort of 6, 7 years old and all of a sudden this bird is dive bombing you out of nowhere. Traumatizing experience. We've survived though. Brian and I survived. We did. Bravo to us. It makes sense that they have to aggressively defend their nests. They nest on the ground, right out in the open, which I don't quite understand, but, you know, it's the way that they are adapted to do things. And their eggs are perfectly camouflaged, which means that they are very easily squashed by animals walking through. And I'd love to know, I don't know how one would even go about finding this out, but I'd love to know what the statistics are in terms of lapwing nests that actually survive to hatch. Because I imagine herds of elephants walking through an area and just squashing them left, right and centre. I don't know how they avoid them. And especially blacksmith lapwings, because they lay their eggs near water, which seems to be even sillier, with all of that foot traffic, hoof traffic coming through to have a drink. But it's obviously a system that works. Okay, let's carry on our perusal of the western edge of Djuma. Sure, it's harsh light. It's already, it's still early in the morning, and it's already starting to heat up. We are in, unless we get rain. Brian, you predicted, what did you say? The 20th.
20th of September.
20th of September. Brian's predicting early rains. I can't even remember what I said now. I think I said the 23rd of October that we're going to have the first rains. Either way, we're in for some seriously harsh weeks. What time is it now? I don't know by watch on.
It's now nearly 5 to 8.
5 to 8. James and I had the same idea. We're on the same wavelength. As we try to dodge the blistering sun, James has made his way to the lovely shikra nest that is on Zoe's Road. I'm going to turn around and go in the opposite direction since I was about to make my way there. Go and have a look at what the shikras are up to.
There's the nest, everybody, of the shikra, as found by Jamil Patterson a little while back. But there don't seem to be any shikras in it. So what I'm going to do is do something very naughty, and I'm going to play the shikra call, because I don't know how to make it with my mouth, and see if we can't attract one of them here. That's the call. It's not a particularly attractive call. I'm just looking around as we observe that rather uncomfortable looking stick nest. No. Yep, yeah, here we go, right there. That's not very nice of me, everybody, but because he does live here anyway, I don't really mind doing it. Now, the descriptor, or how you know this bird is who he is he's got yellow legs, as you might be able to see there, and those Shiraz coloured red eyes when they glint in the light, and a yellow cere. That's the bit above the beak, just below the nose. I'm so glad they're here still, or at least one of them is. That looks like quite a big one. That's probably the female. And we'll see over the course of the season how successful they are at breeding. I think this is so cool that we've got a nest so obviously out in the open here. Now, let's look at the feet again, if we don't mind, Davey, as that as close in as we can get. You can see there the balancing act that's going on, and how difficult it would be with the seemingly small muscles that there are in those tarsals. That's the claws. And so it's far more a balancing act that that bird is doing than it is an act of expending energy holding on to that branch. That is very cool to see. And of course, as I keep saying, you know, we do these every so often, these Facebook Live things where we basically punt the show into a trailer for various forums. And I keep saying the great joy of what Safari Live is that you can watch these stories unfold. It's not like coming on a once-off safari. We can now watch the story of this couple of shikras unfolding. We can watch their eggs being laid, well, probably not physically, but we can certainly watch the chicks and watch how they grow, and that'll be amazing. The other thing we're going to maybe try and do at some stage is put a nest cam, you know, like the one we've got at the Biffles, at least at the Djuma Dam Pan. We can try and put a nest cam next to one of these nests. We're hoping to try that, because that would be just immense fun. You have a live feed of a little nest like this. I don't think that's probably ever been done for a nest of the shikra. He's still very confused as to what bird, where the bird is that was calling here. Very cool. Alrighty, on we go. We're going to go towards Red Dam at Arathusa now. We didn't get any update from Arathusa. I did try and find one, but I don't think there's anything going on there at the moment. So it seems like a quiet morning all round. But we'll pop across there via Impala Plains and see what we can see. There is also, just down here, I can hear the call of the Senegal lapwing, and I think they might start to have a few babies soon as well. Although they don't seem to be particularly seasonal breeders like most of the birds are. We'll just have a look down here in the clearings. What have we got here? I don't see any Senegal lapwings. I heard them calling earlier. It's a bit barren there, David. No, they're not there. Hello Desiree, you want to know where you can see the dam cam? I think if you go to wildearth.tv you will see the dam cam and you'll see the live feed from there. I don't know where you can see the nest cam. Kirsten, where can you see the nest cam? Nest.com. I assume you'd have to put in Djuma perhaps, or Safari Live as a search on nest.com, and then you will see the nest cam. Is that correct? Because I imagine there are lots of nest cams on nest.com dotted around the world. Right, Jamie was hailing me on the radio just now. Let me see what she wants to say. Jamie, do you copy? We'll put her on speakerphone. Sorry, go ahead with your message.
Oh, I just wanted to check what your route was for them. If you're going to hit Arathusa, I'm going to go back to the ellies on Sandy Patch.
Copy that. There you are. You heard that she's going to hopefully some elephants on Sandy Patch Road. I'm going to have to do some sewing, some fixing of my shirt here, David. Do you know how to sew?
Nope.
Jerry can sew, can't she? Yes, Jerry will fix it for me. I can just see Jerry vigorously shaking her head in the final control, and indeed a message has come through. No. Jerry dislocated her knee yesterday, everybody. If I tell you how Jerry dislocated her knee, it might make your morning. There we have a fork-tailed drongo, not a particularly uncommon bird, but, you know, on the scale of things today, worthwhile stopping at, wouldn't you say, David? Except that they've now flown off, haven't they? Yes. Right, on we go then. I guess we'll just have to describe Jerry's injuries. What's she doing yesterday? Hanging a mosquito net? Hanging her blinds. And she slipped off her bed, and her knee popped out, which I think must have been excruciatingly painful. She was very stoic about it. But what's interesting, of course, is that the reason her knee is dodgy is that Jerry, during her time, during her youth, her misspent youth, was apparently no mean hip-hop dancer. Now, I'm not actually sure what that means, but there it is. That was another nest there, Dave. It's a community nest spider on the end of the marula tree that you're looking at. No, down to the right. And in there. Up. And leftish. It's somewhere in there. It's not very important. Sorry, everybody. I just thought it was very high up for a community nest spider. And I thought maybe... No, it's not. It's not there. I thought maybe it was another bird's nest. Okay, let's go to Red Dam. We'll see what we can find there. Let's go get an update from Jamie in the meantime.
While James heads to Red Dam, I have just spotted a warthog. Here he is. 2 warthog, actually. Snuffling away. I wonder if this is the little family that we used to see on Zoe's Road relatively regularly. Warthog, of course, have been one of the animals I think to suffer the most with the drought. They dig up roots and tubers, but they are struggling, and I've seen a lot of very thin-looking warthog over the last few days. You don't look too bad, though, do you? With your glorious mane of hair. Slightly puffed up. That, of course, is the warthog's intimidation factor. So if they're under threat or scared in any way, they do what's known as piloerection. So they erect the hair on the top of their heads and along their backs. Whoopsie, little stumble there. It makes them look much bigger and scarier than they actually are. And the babies take it one step further and have white tufts of hair growing out of the side of their faces, so that they look like they've got big and intimidating tusks. We'll try and reposition to get a better view, since obviously there is a large termite mound in the way. There is a road right there. We might be able to get a slightly better view. There you go. No little one. Around this area we had 2 females with 6 babies that then went to 4 babies. I'm not sure if this is the same group. I can't claim to recognize individual warthogs, but they do tend to move about in the same areas. I think let's try go around. Once the power lines road is right there, and we might be able to have a slightly nicer view. Let's just see which direction they're going in. Yeah, I think that might be our best approach, to go around. I'm particularly fond of warthog. I know they're meant to be one of the, what are they, the ugly five. That includes lappet-faced vultures, marabou, storks, the blue wildebeest, and I think the spotted hyena. All of which, apart from maybe the marabou stork, which I think is really a face only a mother could love. I think the rest of them have rather an unfair reputation. They're not that ugly, but they are included as part of the ugly five. Hello, Warties. What you gonna do? There we go. Okie dokie. Oh, they're not in bad condition, actually. Not looking too thin. There you go, you can see the white fluffiness around the little one's cheeks. That's what I was talking about when I say they're basically meant to look like they've got enormous tusks with those white sideburns. It doesn't really work. Particularly a favourite meal of things like leopards. And Tingana, I know, has a reputation for being a very accomplished warthog catcher. He's even been known and seen on our live safaris to go into warthog burrows, so into the holes in termite mounds that they live in, and go and pull out baby warthogs from there. And certain leopards do specialize in feeding off certain diets, although they're generally very adaptable. And that seems to be one of Tingana's specialities. I've even heard of him, I've never seen it of course, but I have heard of him targeting aardvark as well, waiting outside patiently, outside their burrows for them to emerge before pouncing on them. A warthog is an animal that makes even the bravest leopard think twice every now and again. They're actually relatively dangerous animals for leopards to hunt, particularly the boars, but the sows can be as well, and even the smallest tusks beneath have a lower layer, so the ones that grow from the bottom jaw that are razor sharp and are put to very good use when a warthog is frightened and trying to fight for its life. They've also been responsible for many a human injury as well. They're one of the animals that adapts very quickly to living in gardens, snuffling through watered places, so where the plant life is slightly more nutritious. And you definitely don't want to corner a warthog by mistake. They move incredibly quickly. And even little warthogs like these ones that probably weigh, I don't know, probably around 30 or so kilograms, and they're not massive warthogs, would be a force to be reckoned with in terms of their speed and momentum. I know two people who are going through physiotherapy. Vegan Rossi? Yes, warthogs absolutely do eat meat. Though much like pigs, they do have a slightly omnivorous bent to them. They're mainly herbivores. Their bulk part of their diet consists of snuffling through roots and tubers and other such things. But they will eat meat. They will scavenge off carcasses. They will chew on bits of old meat, just as a way of supplementing the protein in their diet. I've seen them scavenge off carcasses. There was one report, an amazing report about it must have been the beginning of this year, where a warthog was actually recorded killing an impala lamb. Now that's very, very unusual. We don't know exactly, the explanation behind that is a difficult one. Nobody knows exactly what that warthog was about, but it did actually go on to eat a little bit of that impala that it killed. As I said, they can be scary things. They're not quite as omnivorous as something like a bush pig. We would get bush pig here. I've never seen them, but they would occur here. And in fact, some of the more open patches with old aardvark burrows could well be home to sleeping bush pigs that we just don't see because they're nocturnal and a bit more shy. they're also a force to be reckoned with. I know people who've been chased up trees by bush pigs, which is quite an embarrassing story to have to return and tell. But those of you in parts of the world where you have experience with wild hogs, you will know just how dangerous members of the pig family can actually be. But I've got lots of awesome camera trap videos of bush pigs foraging off carcasses or scavenging off carcasses. And in fact, all of our herbivores will eat meat, particularly duiker. And duiker have a reputation for scavenging off carcasses more than other antelope species, but all of them will do it. It's just a way of supplementing their diet. They can't afford to be fussy. And whilst they are basically herbivores, every now and again they will have the odd nibble on something a bit more exotic, so to speak. And speaking of animals that prey on them, Darlene, in San Francisco, yes, absolutely, lions will prey on warthog as well. Particularly when you've got sort of 1 or 2 lionesses. They seem to be the ones the most dedicated towards catching them. We had one live safari drive where Birmingham boy, I can't remember which one it was, but a Birmingham boy just happened to pop out of the bushes right next to the vehicle, go straight towards a warthog burrow and pull out a dead warthog from inside it. That's an example of scavenging, but they do prey on warthog. I think the very, very first time I heard anything about the Birmingham boys when I first started working in this area was when we were still living in the Manuletti camp. And we were driving backwards and forwards each and every day, in the evening and in the morning. And they'd killed a warthog, the 5 of them had killed a warthog on the boundary of Manuletti and Buffelshoek. That was the first time I had ever encountered or heard of the Birmingham boys. But 1 warthog between 5 male lions does not a meal make. So generally it's lone lionesses or 1 or 2 lionesses. Although they are part of the pig family, they're separately enough evolved that they no longer interbreed with domestic pigs. Safari Dean, to the best of my knowledge, I have never heard of a warthog crossbreeding with a domestic. Oh, panic! Tails up immediately. Shame it's windy, so they are on edge as well. Safari Dean, I've never heard of it occurring in the same way that African wildcats will interbreed with domestic or feral cats. I'm trying to think if there's been any examples. I think they are separate enough that doesn't occur. Nor do you get interbreeding between bush pigs and domestic pigs, to the best of my knowledge. So no crossing between the different species there. And as you know, of course, that is one of the biggest threats to African wild occurring African wildcats. I'm just going to go backwards a little bit. There we go. So we've got a female and her youngster here, just by the way. I haven't actually gone into the sort of the details of this particular sighting. This is the adult female, and then the little one at the back is probably her 1 remaining offspring. So whilst warthog can have up to 6 babies at a time, very seldom that they manage to raise to adulthood more than 1 or 2 in one go. But they will fiercely defend their little ones if they can. Much, much smaller. The sows are much smaller than the boars. And of course, the name, the warthog, or the warts on the face, is actually what gives away whether or not it is a male or a female. The female has only 2, the male has 4. There you go. You can just see them sticking out close to her, underneath her eyes. Alright, little warthogs, I think we're going to leave you and go off and see if we can find some elephants. And while we do that, to keep you occupied and to stop you from getting bored, James has found something else very large.
Well, it's not the largest one I've ever seen, everybody. In fact, I missed it entirely. What we do have on the road here are tracks of a big male leopard with a female leopard. So I'm fairly sure that must be Tingana and Shadow walking along the road. We've come south of Red Dam, where there was one lonely blacksmith plover. And we came down here and we found a Beefy. And Beefy is sitting there just chewing his cud in a slightly melancholy and morose fashion. He's not very enthusiastic about it, is he, David? He's not sort of relishing the fact that he's re-eating the food that he ate some time back. And as Kirsten points out, he's very drooly. They do drool, these animals, and it's one of the reasons they have to eat at least drink so much water. They drool because the saliva helps them to digest what is essentially extremely poor quality forage. And so that drooling process is actually quite important. But of course it needs to be replaced. And the only way to replace it, David, is to go down and have a drink somewhere. So I suspect that this fellow will not be too long away from Red Dam, where currently he will find himself drinking only with a blacksmith lapwing. Let's continue down the road here, because there are tracks of these 2 leopards here. I mean, the last time they were seen was yesterday, I thought. Was it yesterday? Yes, it was yesterday on Little Gowrie. So these might... They don't look that old to me, but they don't look like they are, as they say, shining with freshness. And I think that's because of the wind, though. There's been quite a strong wind, and so they might be around here. But if they are mating, of course, there will be that very loud growling sound that they make. So we're going to ease our way into the clearing here. The tracks still go along the road, and then we'll do a little trip down towards the Arathusa camp. I don't think we're going to go all the way there, though, because that dam is now completely dry, which I didn't think I'd ever see. Now, let's just see if the tracks come out here. We'll just pop into the clearings here and have a look there. I'm just listening to the radio, but I don't think there's anything going on Arathusa this morning. We'll just stop here and listen and see if we can't hear the sound of mating leopards. Did that make you afraid, David? I'm a very scary person. Right, let's have a little listen here. See if we don't hear what I just sung for you. No, I don't think those tracks are very fresh, I'm afraid. There are some very relaxed looking impala nearby. No, just the wind blowing at the moment. Right, let's carry on down the road here. I'm going to increase my speed slightly. I've been peering into the bushes the whole day with such care, so slowly. Now we're going to try a slightly different approach, which is cover more ground. There's an impala, David. I think we should stop for every mammal we see. Have a brief visit. Ask them if they've seen a leopard, have you seen any leopards? Mating or otherwise? No? Are you sure? Make sure you keep an eye out. They'll be hungry. Right, male impala. On his own. It's a bit strange, really. Why he's on his own? I'm sorry, one last thing here, David. Other than the rather desertified piece of landscape here, just behind him, so go back to where we started there, that black patch in the middle of your screen there is an impala midden. Now, let me just quickly go and have a look there. Oh, something else. So this is all impala dung. Can you hear me still, David?
Yes,
For now. And this would have been done during the... How's that? Can you hear me? So that would have been done during the rut, everybody. And that's where the male's impala will be. No, the tree's not relevant to the story. That's where they would have put their dung in an attempt to mark their territory. And, you know, sometimes the females put their dung there as well, and I'm not really sure why. But that's all impala dung, and it's very old because obviously the rut is finished. Well, it finished in May. David, do you have your fire implement with you? Do you think I might trouble you for it? Now, of course, part of the job of a guide, apart from guiding people and explaining what happens in the bush, is to clean up litter. And there are some pieces of litter, everybody, that a human being should not be required to pick up. And this is one of them. And because we are not worried about a fire hazard, I'm going to burn this particular piece of litter. David, this thing doesn't work. There we are. Must be done, everybody. But I certainly wasn't going to pick that up. And please don't worry about a fire hazard. You can see there's absolutely nothing here that could possibly burn. It's just sand. Oh, that was quite effective, really. Okay, on we go. Hello, Liz. You want to know if there are any plants that are dependent on fire for their distribution. No, I don't think for their distribution, Liz, but certainly there are many plants that are dependent, if not dependent, adapted to fire for their sort of well-being or longevity. And the most obvious one would be the grass, Themeda triandra, or red grass as we call it here. Red oat grass as we call it in the Mara, those of us in the know, of course, who've spent at least, 2 days up there. And that particular grass only grows properly when it's burned every few years. But an area like this, for example, is not particularly fire dependent. There used to be this notion of a fire climax system where systems have to have fire in order to kind of thrive. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but certainly some species, as the old Zulu saying goes, "Uchane obulele buvuswa ngumlilo," David. The grass that has been asleep is woken by the fire. It's many grass species that will thrive on being burned every so often. The trees don't die here. None of these trees, no matter how big the fire is that comes through here, almost none of them will be killed by fire. The tops will die off in the heat, and then they coppice from the base. And it's often the reason that many of these trees are multi-stemmed. So most trees, of course, will just stick up one stem and become the trunk. But if they get hammered by elephants or they get burned by fire, they die off and they put up another few stems, and that's called coppicing, and it happens here quite a lot as a result of fire. Thank you, Liz. David, speaking of fire, do you feel quite a lot of heat coming from the eastern side of the sky right now? Yes, it is getting warm. No further sign of shadow in Tinganana. So let me just go down this road and see if they don't pop out. Slightly closer to the Arathusa Lodge. Now Jamie has seemingly not managed to find the elephants just yet, but I believe she is hot on the trail, so let's go and find out how hot that trail is.
So hot it's positively blistering. I think, well, we have found the elephants, obviously. We had just found them, so hence why James was under the impression that we had not. I'm glad to tell you that he had complete faith in us, though, Brian.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. That is very comforting. So yes, we have indeed relocated our elephants. I mean, they'd be a little bit hard to miss. We're currently sitting on the road, and they are very large animals, big and grey. It would have been a bit shameful if we had missed out on seeing them. We've got a massive cow munching away at the guarri bushes, and I think this is a nice, peaceful way to enjoy the ever-warming morning. Now, we spoke yesterday at length about the green guarri bushes and why they stay so green, and the fact that most of the animals don't seem to eat them. And we spoke about how when you do see an animal eating them, then you know absolutely how desperate that particular creature must be. And you can see these elephants are munching away at it. So although the trees look bright and green and beautiful in this area, they have very little nutrient content, which is why they stay so bright and green and beautiful during the dry summer months. Does the tail look silly? Does it look short? No, I think it's just my imagination. I think it's just the way it's moving, and the fact that it's got a little kink in it. So that calm swishing from side to side is immediately an indication that the elephant is perfectly relaxed. She's just happily feeding away. It is windy. It is very, very windy now this morning. I'm always a bit more cautious in the way that we approach elephants. On that subject, Alice in Ohio would like to know if perhaps elephants feel less threatened by female guides, since our voices are softer. I certainly think that elephants can distinguish between male and female. I don't think that they really are too bothered by it. I actually, to be completely honest with you, Alice, I actually think that the male tone of voice is probably more comforting to the elephants than a female, which is why often when I do speak to the elephants, I try and keep my tone quite low, the pitch of my voice quite low. You definitely don't want to do any high-pitched squealing or anything of the sort, or speak in very high-pitched tones around them. Because whilst, whenever we come up to the elephants, we start to talk to them, and it's not because they understand a word that we're saying, but they do understand the tones. They recognize calming tones. I've even heard of elephants being calmed down. It's such an awesome view, by the way. That's really, really cool. Just look at the size difference between her front legs and her back legs. Front legs in the middle, back legs on either side. That's fascinating. There's almost, the back one's almost half the size of the front ones. We often talk about how they carry most of the weight on their front of their body. Well, there you go. You've got a beautiful indication there of exactly how it works. So, Alice, I think that honestly, they're not too bothered either way, but as I said, you've got to keep your tone and your pitch quite low when you talk to them. There's one group of animals that most definitely distinguishes between male and female guides, or male, just in general, males and females, and that is, of course, primates. It is the most frustrating thing in the world when you're desperately trying to chase monkeys away from the camp, or baboons, and they look at you with complete insouciance and sort of cockiness if you're a girl, and then a boy just has to walk outside and wave his arms and give a shout, and off they pelt into the distance. I'm much, much more intimidated by men than they are of women. shifting around. She's moving the dead, we've seen them do this a lot this morning, moving the dead branches and dead trees around. It's not because they're interested in eating them, obviously, but because the areas underneath those dead branches and twigs are protected a little bit more from the elements and I nearly said elephants, from the elements and the sun and the wind. It means that there might be some remaining green plants underneath them. They're essentially a seed bank for the different types of plants. Build up of moribund material. That's the sort of thing that would burn if in controlled fires. On windy days, I mentioned that one has to be a little bit more cautious around elephants, or around all animals, but especially elephants. They get very upset. That's because their sense of smell and their... Oh, that's awesome. Casual trunk full of dust there, billowing about. Hello, girl. That's because they rely on their sense of smell and hearing most of all, and their sense of eyesight is not 100, well, it's not fantastic, it's not as good as a human being's. William, you want to know if they see in colour. To the best of my knowledge, only partially. So they will pick up on, they've got more rods than cone cells. Which is the one that sees colour again? Oh, for goodness sake. I used to know this so well. I think it's cones that see colour. Yeah, so they've got more rods than cones, which allows them to see slightly better at night, but generally most of their world is in vague shades of grey. You might find that they get flashes of perhaps blue and green, but for the most part they're almost completely colourblind. The same with most of the animals out here, except for the primates and the insects and the birds. But for most of the mammal species, there's very little reason for them to have colour vision. They're far more reliant on their sense of smell, and it's much more important for them to be able to see in the dark than it is for us as primates. And the same applies for monkeys and baboons. They need to be able to see in colour. It plays an important role in their lives, less so for the elephants. Baby elephants' eyesight is eminently better than the adults. The same applies for quite a few baby animals I've noticed. Rhino as well. The adults peer at you myopically and blink away, and the little ones are focused clearly on you. I do think that baby animals or especially baby pachyderms, have a much better sense of eyesight than we do. Look at that. That is magnificent. How's that for texture? No wonder that elephants are such a photographic muse for so many people. Look at the toenails of this elephant. Generally 5 on the front and 4 in the back, but that can vary from elephant to elephant. Thick, thick, thick keratin. We definitely wouldn't want toenails of that thickness. The elephant foot is such a fascinating structure. The way that they are actually walking on their tiptoes, believe it or not, and that whole round foot is essentially just a spongy tissue. Amazing creatures. And an elephant can go, you must not be fooled, an elephant can walk wherever a human can walk, rather on 2 feet. So wherever you could go without having to climb, an elephant could go too. I found dung on tops of koppies, which is a sort of a mountainous rocky pile or hill. I found elephant dung in all kinds of curious places. They are surprisingly nimble for something that looks big, slow and cumbersome. She's just in the wrong position now. I don't want to start up, I don't want to start low. Just a quick check behind me. Make sure that there's nobody coming up. She's not hugely unsettled, but she's giving us a couple of unhappy body language signs, so she's just nervous more than anything else. So I'm going to let her walk ahead a bit before we reposition. Let's go across to James, who has arrived at a waterhole.
A waterhole is a very, very strong term for the place we've arrived, everybody. We're here at Arathusa Dam, but there ain't no water here. There's some zebra. There's also a, well, we're going to have a look at him now, but there is also a stork, a marabou stork. There he is, the world's ugliest bird. I believe you were talking about the ugly 5 with Jamie. I don't know what they are. I think I know 3 of them. I think the warthog and the wildebeest are both included. The marabou stork must surely be the pinnacle of the ugliness, and a hyena, that's very unfair, I must say. I think a hyena shouldn't be in there at all. There, those impala are now going to eat the marabou stork. They're not really, David, I'm just joking. The marabou, very content, of course, because many of the catfish that were here have now died and make excellent scavenging forage. Now, if we go a little bit forward, we'll also notice some fish eagles. There are two here, one juvenile and one adult. Just ease my way forward, because what happens is that these fish eagles do fly. They don't tend to like to be too confiding if you approach them too quickly. So let's just cruise slowly along here. Ooh, Davey, before we do that, I'm going to ask you to scan across this section of what I think are grey-headed sparrows on the ground, but there are probably quite a few other birds there. There's some canaries, definitely some canaries, and what I'm hoping to see, everybody, is an intermediate wider. And what I mean by that is a wider that is coming into its summer plumage. But I'm afraid all I can see there are grey-headed sparrows and the yellow-fronted canaries. So the widers, you know those birds with the big long tails, the eastern paradise wider that we get here, they will start to go into their summer plumage now, and in winter, of course, they're almost nondescript brown birds. They're very difficult to actually see. But in summer, I'll just quickly show you a picture before we move on to the marabou and the fish eagly. Here they are. There is the broad-tailed paradise wider. Let's go to the eastern. There's the eastern paradise wider there. And he'll just be coming into that plumage now. The tail will be growing at a rapid rate. And if you look at him there, that's the kind of intermediate form. That's what the male and female look like in the winter time. And you'd hardly notice them at all, which I think is quite fun. And then now as we come into summer, that's what they'll begin to look like. The eastern paradise wider, David. Let's move forward a little bit. Now, I think what we should look at first, David, is that fish eagle there. Sally in Oregon, you're wondering if it's harder to find sightings when it's really hot. It would have seemed to be, but it's not. I mean, it shouldn't be. You should just be able to pitch up at the water holes and find buffalo and elephant almost at will. Certainly, I'm going to try to go to Cheetah Plains this afternoon, and I'm pretty sure that's what the case will be. But yes, it can be. Because animals tend to want to hide from the heat in much the same way that we do, you find that they go into thick bush where they can be quite difficult to see. But there's lots going on here, even though there isn't much water. There is a little bit of water I can see. Actually, there's a puddle. And I think that's why there's so much activity going on here at the dam. I'm going to attempt one more advance on that fish eagle to get a slightly closer look. They are beautiful animals. But there's the little patch of water. Davey, did you see it just to the far left of us there? The other side of the island. There is a patch of water. I didn't realize there was, but that's why there's so many impala here coming to drink, because the heat starts to build. It's why the zebra here, and it's also why, of course, there are one or two waterbuck. Now, Dave, I'm going to ask you to put the camera on the fish eagle because I think he might fly. But let's just see if we can't get slightly closer. We'll just ease our way closer, habituate him. And if he flies, I'll switch off immediately and we'll let Dave track his amazing flight path. He's being very kind to us. Oh, there. Still got him there, Dave?
Yeah.
There we are. Oh, amazing. Isn't that nice? That is the fish eagle. Now we'll try and sneak up on the marabou stork. Now the marabou stork, I don't know if you can see it there, but it's probably standing about 3.5 feet off the ground. It's very tall, and it was resting on its sort of bottom tarsal joints. David, do you have any idea why his legs are so white? Have a guess. His legs are so white because he relieves himself on his own legs in order to make himself cooler. Isn't that disgusting? I mean, he's a startlingly ugly bird. I suppose the one redeeming feature would be that sort of little bit of green he's got at the back of his wings. But otherwise he really is a harbinger of horror. The Freddy Krueger of the bush. Poor little thing. So he's tall, 3.5 feet. Let me just check that that's accurate. I think it's remarkably large for a bird. It's called a stork. Search stork. Tap tap. Yeah, 1.5 meters tall. That's even more, you know. That's about 4 feet tall. 4 and a bit if he stuck his beak up straight. And a 7-kilogram bird for a really big one. So that's pretty impressive. And they really are largely scavengers, and closely related, of course, most closely related to birds in the New World, like the Andean condor, for example, which finds its kills with smell. And this bird finds its kills with smell, unlike our vultures here, which find their kills using their eyes only. You can feel that strange wind blowing, and it's blowing from the northeast, which is unusual. Safari Dean, you want to know which animal I would put into the ugly five? Well, I mean, one shouldn't just talk about people's and animals' looks, I suppose. But if we were going to, I'd say the ugly five for me would consist of the marabou stork, the marabou stork, the marabou stork, the marabou stork, and the marabou stork. I think that they are so far in excess of ugly compared with anything else out here that I think to put anything else in the same category would be a gross injustice to all other creatures out here. No, wait, there are two. There's another one. There's another one which I'll show you a picture of, everybody. It's something called a whip scorpion. It's a completely harmless beast, but I promise you now, if you ever find a whip scorpion, oh yes, and Kirsten's just reminded me, the naked mole rat is also going to be in the ugly five. I'll show you a picture of that. So marabou stork takes up 3 other places. Then we're going to have a whip scorpion for you. There is a whip scorpion. Now I assure you, when you see that thing, it is utterly harmless. But when that thing comes crawling out from behind the mirror where you are shaving or perhaps brushing your hair, you will squeal and jump and do yourself a horrible injury, because it is an utterly terrifying looking creature. That is the whip scorpion. So he gets the other award for the ugly five. I suppose we should try and find 5. So that's 2. And then the next one is this vile thing. Ugh. I've just seen a picture of it, that's why I had to shudder. Have you seen that thing, David? That thing there. The naked mole rat or sand puppy. Not a good looking animal at all. Something about not having lips or hair, I think. Right, so that's 3 of the ugly 5 for me. I'll try and think of another 2 as we continue. While we do that, let's go back to the elephants with pyjamas.
Well, we've just realised that on our sunrise safari, we've been seriously missing one particular character. So the thumb just thought he'd pop in and say good morning to you all, since he hadn't done it earlier this morning. So good morning to the thumb. I hope the thumb has had a good drive. Has the thumb had a good drive,
Yeah,
Brian?
I think so. Hasn't complained too much.
No, that's good to hear. So the thumb hasn't been too full of complaints. The thumb is usually the strong and silent type, as it is. Our elephants, far more beautiful than the marabou stork. I'm with James, by the way, on the naked mole rat deal. They are pretty. They're pretty ugly creatures. They're cool, but they're pretty ugly. There's what's that mole with the sort of the finger-like protrusions on the end of its nose? Can't remember what it's called now, but it's the most bizarre-looking creature. Oh, that was not at us. That was, I think, just shifting sand and dust out of her ears. It's the elephant cow that's been throwing dust over her back the entire time we've been watching. It's a nice way of providing a little bit of a natural sunblock. I think she knows just how hot it's going to be this afternoon or today. She's deciding to layer up on her dust protection, at the same time attempting to get whatever food she can.
Have it, find it.
And of course, one of the things that we always marvel at is the way that elephants grab branches full of thorns and pop them into their mouth without the slightest sign of discomfort or even a mild grimace. And Angel, you're wondering about how common trunk injuries are and whether or not they affect the elephant's eating. Yes, I'm going to answer the second part first. Yes, they do affect the elephant's eating. As you can see, a trunk is a crucial part of the elephant's whole feeding strategy. And they essentially use it in conjunction with their lower lip and their tusks to shovel food into their mouth at a rather rapid rate, or sometimes a relatively rapid rate. And of course they use it to drink as well. It's very difficult for an elephant to climb down onto its knees and drink using its mouth directly from the water. The babies do it, but for the adults that's a very tricky process. In terms of how common it is, the trunk is a very, very tough, I suppose you'd call it an organ, I guess. It's a very, very tough organ. The muscles and the skin is incredibly thick around it, so it's relatively uncommon for them to be injured by something like a thorn. But maybe, I would say, we see, let's say, 1 out of every herd, or 1 out of every 2 herds might have a trunk injury of some description. It might be generally the males perhaps fighting or sparring with each other. They might have a little bit of a hole. Sometimes they get tick-related injuries or skin diseases. We've seen some bizarre things. We've seen one with almost a blister-like protrusion, some kind of a growth on its trunk. Just like human beings, with different genetic codes, and therefore we fall prey to different problems and complaints, elephants are much the same. Little one, there's no way Mom is going to let you suckle. She's a very young female. This must be her first calf. It's now reaching definitely past the stage where she would be lactating and it would be feeding from her. Giving us a demonstration of her incredible power. Brian and I are just commenting on something that I've only really picked up now. And one of the things about these live safaris is we spend probably longer than you might even with guests, depending upon your guests, of course, just because you've got the pressure of time and the you need to show them a certain number of animals before they leave. But we get to spend tremendous periods of time with these animals, observing their behavior. And one of the animals that we interact with, I think, the most is elephants, especially yet little elephants, who often come to us to alleviate their boredom. They come up and charge the vehicle, or shake their heads, or just come up to have a look. And I've noticed over the last few weeks that this is happening less and less frequently. And in fact, now that I think about it, they're actually playing with each other less as well. And the only explanation I can have for that is that it's because they're trying to sustain themselves, so they need to eat more than they would otherwise. Oh, shame, little one. No. No luck. Desperately trying to suckle from Mom. Mom is definitely not lactating. Sorry, baby. You can try again. He's going to try again. And a lot of the squealing sounds that we hear from elephants is in this kind of scenario. No. No, little one. You're getting far too big for that now. Sorry. Yes, little boy. So a lot of the time when baby elephants are denied access to milk, then the elephants will have tantrums, proper tantrums, squealing, shouting tantrums. Sometimes they go around and hit bushes. They're so frustrated. And little elephants are such immense characters. And Gary, you were wondering about any sightings of Benjamin Button recently. Benjamin is a young elephant with the wrinkliest forehead anybody's ever seen, hence the name Benjamin Button. Totally adorable. Gary, I haven't seen him since I've come back to work. I don't know if he was seen whilst I was on leave. He could even be part of this herd, for all we know. I mean, there are youngsters at the back. We just haven't had a chance to see them. They're quite well hidden behind the bushes. But he might be part of this herd. I haven't seen him in about 3 or so weeks. The question is, will we be able to recognize Benjamin Button as he starts to grow? Because I have a feeling that wrinkly forehead is going to disappear. I imagine it's going to be a scenario similar to the wrinkly bottom baby elephant that was famous for running up to vehicles and doing standing on his back legs, sort of bouncing. I don't think I ever encountered him. I'm afraid no sign of Benjamin Button, but he's a character that we're always keeping an eye out for. Alright, well, let us see what James is up to since he has left Red Dam on Arathusa.
We're live. Sorry, everybody. The wind was blowing so hard that all I heard was live. So I think we're live. We've come out of Arathusa and we are now turning back onto Djuma, for the smell of Amanda's cooking is now starting to overwhelm me with a sense of great expectation and joy. Unlike my ability to find animals today, which fills me with a sense of sadness and dread. David, have we thought of anything else that should belong to the ugly five? I've really struggled. Whip scorpion, naked mole rat, and marabou stork. I don't think warthog belongs there. I don't believe that wildebeest belongs there. I don't think that hyena definitely doesn't belong there. Centipede. Centipede must be part of the ugly five. They make me cringe. Blah. Centipede, now we need one more. Ah, David, you say, but uniquely, although ugly is sin itself, the naked mole rat never gets cancer. That's very interesting. I had no idea that that was the case. Thank you for that, David. That's really interesting. Alright, naked mole rat, we have marabou stork, centipede, whip scorpion. We need one more, Dave. Solifuge? I quite like solifuge. They make you grill, do they? It's a lovely word in Afrikaans, everyone, that doesn't really have an English equivalent, I suppose, like many of the good Afrikaans words, and that's grill. When you say I grill, you get little, oh, gives me the grills. That's what a centipede does to me, and what a solifuge does to David. What I suspect a naked mole rat would do to me too. You know what else could easily qualify? I'm not sure. It probably has to be a wild animal though. That naked cat thing that people breed. That thing gives me the thrills. That could easily be part of the ugly five. That's a horrible thing. They look so... I don't know. No. The naked cat. Can't think of any other birds. I like all the other birds, I believe. And I was trying to think of an amphibian, maybe a salamander. A loud-mouthed drunk tortoise. From Gary. Well, tourist, a loud-mouthed drunk tourist. Yes. Gary, that is going to be the final member of the Ugly Five. A loud-mouthed, drunk guest or tourist. Yes, okay, we have it. Thank you, Gary, well done. Just, the loud-mouthed drunk tourist has just pipped the naked cat as part of the Ugly Five. And to those of you who perhaps own one of those naked cats, I'm very sorry. Alright, we're going to leave you now, everybody. I've spoken enough nonsense for one day. Thank you, David, for your efforts. Yes, we'll hand you back over to Jamie and Benjamin Button for the final few minutes of the drive. See you later. Bye-bye.
Can you believe it? Speak of the little devil and he will appear. Benjamin Button has just made an appearance for the last few moments of the sunrise safari. So there you go. Any updates on Benjamin? Yes. He's there, right in front of us. He just came wandering out of the bushes. It is absolutely amazing. I mean, it has to be him, with that incredibly wrinkly forehead and that little personality. He's just wandered miles away. He went all the way across to the other females and then all the way back. And then, the amazing part of the whole sighting was he encountered a little male, or a slightly older male, that looked like it was about to go bully him, and this female that's on the left, she's young, I mean she's still under 10 years old, she came running up to make sure that Benji was okay. Could it be an older sister perhaps? Definitely an older cousin of some description. It just goes to show how tight the bonds are between the different members of an elephant herd. Really truly special way to end off our sunrise safari. I can't believe that. I really can't. And Benjamin Button just decided to pop out as if to say, yes, I'm here. Been here all along. What's wrong with you? Of course I'm here. Absolutely stunning. Come on, Benji. Come out and say hello properly. Oh, wind is picking up. Look, she's following him. She is too. She's making sure that he's okay. He's gone for a run. What you guys doing over here? I'm pretty sure Mom is all the way on the other side of this elephant herd, but he's gone to go investigate. Oh, where are you going? Oh dear. Encountered somebody else? Okay. You're a naughty boy. Go back to your mom. I think that's what he's been told to do over there by that female. I love the interactions with elephants. I don't want to start up and disturb them, so we'll just have to, for the last few moments, just enjoy the view that we have. All being watched over by grandmother at the back. A contented elephant family scene. Absolutely beautiful. And one of the big reasons why elephants are probably my favorite animals to sit and watch for endless periods of time. There's always something interesting and exciting going on. A little bit of an intricate dynamic between the different herd members. And unfortunately, our time with them is not unlimited, and it is in fact time for us to say a goodbye and thank you to all of you for joining us. So a big thank you, first of all, most importantly, to Brian, without whom there would be none of these incredible images, because of course he is the real hero of the show. And then, of course, our animals are next in line, as well as to Kirsty and to Jerry, who managed to hobble to final control. Most importantly, a vast and enormous thank you to all of you for joining us on the Sunrise Safari. We'll catch you in a few short hours. Until then, bye-bye and have a wonderful day.